Howdy folks, this is Big Sam. Today, we're going to go over the Big Sam method for removing an extractor from a Mosin Nagant bolt head. Now before we get into it, there's a couple reasons why you may want to remove this piece right here, the extractor. Reason number one, a lot of Mosins will have a really sticky bolt that can be hard to close or open. And if you've already gone through the process of thoroughly cleaning out the inside of your chamber and locking lug recesses and such in your Mosin, but you're still having a really hard time opening and closing it, one of the things that can be helpful for debugging this process is to simply just remove the extractor, put your bolt back together, and see if it's still just as hard to close the bolt or if it got easier. If it got easier after removing the extractor, you know that it has something to do with the extractor. So probably it needs to be a little bit of adjusted, so you might need to adjust it or bend it slightly so it can have an easier time getting over the extractor recess in the barrel or getting over the rim of the case, whatever your potential problem is. But that's a video for another day. What we're interested in is simply removing this. Now, sometimes you also have the extractor break off in half. Usually the top half here will be broken off. Fear not if that happens to you. One, it's actually easier to get out a broken extractor than an intact extractor. Number two, it's really easy to replace these, and you can get them for like $20 or $30 US. So if your extractor breaks, which is not super common, but it does happen occasionally, never fear, because we'll be able to fix that easy. Well, let's go over two methods for how to remove this. Now, the first one is can be a little bit tedious, and you kind of need three hands to do it sometimes, which is why it's a little tedious. Now, the thing I get is this little handy plastic base. You can get these off of Brownells. And what's handy about these is they have these holes in them. Because what we want is to be able to punch the extractor out. But I can't just do it setting it on here because it has to go down. It has to go somewhere. There's got to be a hole for it to drop through, which is why I have these. What we're going to do is hit the top of the extractor down because the extractor is going to come out this way. It comes in through here and it comes out that way. Now, to show you that a little bit better, here's a Mosin bolt made by the New England Westinghouse factory that does not have an extractor on it. Okay, now Mosin bolts are going to have the bolt heads are going to have these two recesses. There's this big recess and then there's this smaller diameter recess. The smaller one is so that the ejector can ride through it. The bigger one is so the extractor can fit in there. So here's a Mosin extractor. This is what it looks like. This one is a little bit unusual because it's blued. We'll talk about that another day, but just think of this as a normal extractor. Now what you're going to do to install this is, you can see you got this little notch right here, and it's going to line up with this notch right here. So to come in, it comes in like this, and you're going to hit it this way. To come out, it's going to come out the same direct way. It's going to come out here. So to remove it, what we want to do is hit it from the top and pop it out. So I'm going to set it here on my base, make sure it can have room to drop through that hole. Then I'm going to get a brass punch of some kind. Now, I like this one. This is 5/32 diameter because you want it to be wide enough to hit the top of the extractor, but it also needs to fit through this channel right here. See that? So this one is able to fit through here, at least to like halfway point, which should be all we need. Okay, so I got my punch, and then the last thing is just I got a brass hammer right here. Pretty simple stuff. So I need one hand to hold the punch up, another hand to hit it. Then sometimes it would be helpful to have a third hand to actually hold the bolt in place, which is why method number two may be a little better. But we're going to try this method first. Sometimes this works, sometimes this is a little bit harder, just depending on the extractor and how hard it's in there. right, we made a tiny little bit of progress. The tricky thing is just getting this thing to hold. If you can jerry-rig something, that would be even better. All right, so that guy's off. See, that was not so bad, and you can see it fell through this little hole right here. Sometimes you gotta just have enough inertia, right? There's enough inertia you gotta overcome it. So, depends on the extractor. Some of them are easy to get out, some of them are hard to get out. But as you can see, that was no big deal. We didn't bend this. That's why I like brass. We don't have to worry about deforming this a lot. You can bend the extractor doing this, but you have to be pretty intentional about doing it. So you basically have to get the punch like in between the extractor and the bolt head like that as you're beating it off, and then you can end up like bending it. You don't want to do that. You just want to make sure that all the time the punch is in contact with the top here. Pretty simple, folks, no big deal. Now to get it back in, all you do is set it up the same way we had before. You slide it from the bottom there. So it's going to slide in, and all I have to do is just beat it like that. Really simple stuff. Let's go ahead and check out method number 2, because it can be a little handier if you're having trouble getting a hold of this rascal. Alright, so for method number 2, we're going to still need our punch and our hammer, but we're swapping out our plastic base for this little handy, I think this may be a Harbor Freight vise. It's got these little rubber grips here on the side, so I'm going to open this guy up. And the rubber's nice because it's not going to scratch up your bolt head. So I'm going to line this up to where this is not, the vise itself is not putting tension up against the side of the extractor. That would not be what we want. So I'm going to set it up here kind of on the side. Let's see. Yeah, probably right about there, because we're going to get a lot of good grip right there. So you can see nothing's pressing up against the side of the extractor. And I'm going to set this guy right smack here in the middle. And I'm just going to go ahead and tighten him some. This way I don't need that third hand to hold on to it. So we're going to see if this works any better for us. All right. Make sure he's in there okay. We're going to try this. You want to make sure you have really fast, hard, intentional taps. If you just tap really slowly like that, eventually you're just going to beat it out of the vise. So you can see that force is sort of moving it, so I can reset it here after a couple taps, but it is already moving. Look at that, folks. That was pretty easy. Now you do have to be careful with this method, because as we see, the extractor can go flying out because there was nothing holding it. That was one of the nice things about having this, as we saw from step number 1, was it just fell in there and we didn't have to worry about it go flying. So that's one precaution you may want to take when going with this particular method. But as you can see, this can be very, very effective. Now, can you use other things besides brass? You can, but I wouldn't recommend it. Because again, brass is good because it's going to be softer than the steel here. And what we don't want to do is mar up or scratch up or really bend our bolt head or extractor in the process of doing this. So if you're going to do this, I highly recommend something like this 5/32 brass punch and a brass hammer. Now, you've seen me on countless occasions on this channel use brass punches like this, so if you're going to do anything like you see here on the channel, I highly, highly recommend picking one up, a set of brass punches like this. Just, they're really handy to have around for all sorts of Mosin-related activities. So thank you guys for watching. I hope this was helpful, and maybe it gives you some ideas of how you can remove your Mosin extractor, or maybe if you need to. And if you need to, as we saw in this video, it is not the end of the world, folks. No big deal. So thanks guys for watching. Let me know if y'all got any prayer requests, and we'll see you next time.